Well, Holly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and share your story. I know that it takes a lot of courage and brevity to be willing to come forward and fight as openly and forwardly as you are, especially in a community like Gainesville. So I just want to applaud you for doing that, but also just thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and lift your voice and your experience.
No problem. Of course, of course.
Cool. So why don't we start by, well, I have a pretty good idea of what Gainesville's like. Obviously, I've been participating in activism related to social justice, especially racial justice there in the Gainesville area for at least the last year, in particular in my work with Pro Gainesville. And in doing so, I've kind of become connected with a lot of community leaders in the area, which is how you and I met. And while I might be more familiar with the way that race relations work in Gainesville and Cooke County, I would love for you to share, your experience as a Black woman with a family, raising a family in that community. So maybe just give us a little background. Tell us, how. I can't remember if you have always lived in Gainesville or if you moved there, but just kind of give us an idea about your family's history in Gainesville.
Yes. I was born and raised in Gainesville. I've been here all my life. When I say all my life, I am 36. So I've been here all my life. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandpa was a patrol officer back in the days. It was before my time, but he worked on the streets. He patrolled the streets. So I have experienced a lot of stuff because they raised me. So I've been around him. So he experienced a lot of racism because he was one of five African American men that patrolled the streets back then.
Is that as a city of Gainesville police officer? So
He
what
wasn't
decade
a,
would
he wasn't a police officer, but he was back then. He was like a security where he went and he actually went to all the buildings like late at night. He would go to all the buildings and make sure they were all nobody was trying to break in. This is back then. It was when cameras wasn't really, really big back then. So he would go to all like the local business and he would patrol that area, and he was a security guard. So it was very few black men security guards. He was one of probably, I want to say 4 or 5 that
and would this have been during like I would guess that you said this was before your era, so this would have been like during the 60s and 70s era?
I was born in 85. So okay. It was before 85. Actually, when I was about 2 years old, he was still doing it. So I think he done it from the time I wasn't even born until I was probably about 2 or 5. I remember him doing it. And I remember him coming home. He would take us in his security car at night and ride us around. So I lived it. I have lived Gainesville, should I say that? So I know a little bit about.
And just to make sure people understand, the African American, the Black population in Gainesville is very small. I believe that in Cooke County, it makes up less. I think that the Black community makes up less than 2% of the population.
Yes, that is correct.
It is predominantly white.
Yes, that is correct. It is very small. I think my family, my maiden name is Franklin. So I think that the Franklins I think we're the majority of that, we're the majority of Gainesville. So yeah, there's not very many African Americans.
And Gainesville has, like most small rural communities in Texas, especially in North Texas, Gainesville has a very distinctly racial history in the sense that, of course, there was the largest mass hanging of white people in Gainesville after the Civil War when the white men who tried to fight against the Confederacy were all caught, and more than 40 plus men were hung over the series of a week, known as the Great Hanging of
Right.
Gainesville.
Right.
But part of that story, of course, that also gets left out is the fact that there were also a lot of Black people who were enslaved in that area and murdered whenever it was suspected that enslaved persons might try and support Union sympathizers. And that, of
Right.
course, gets completely left out.
Right.
Did that kind of history play any role in your upbringing? Or, are you, as a Black child in Gainesville growing up during the 80s and 90s, did you learn about that history? Did you know about the Great Hanging? Did you know about, the mass
Uh,
attacks on enslaved persons?
I knew a little bit about it. My grandpa experienced a lot of it, and he was born and raised as well around the area. He experienced a lot of it, and his parents and my grandma parents experienced a lot of it. So they would tell us as kids what they have to deal with. So they would tell us bits and pieces, but it was really touchy with my grandfather. He really didn't go into full details. It was really touchy because he lived it and it hurt him, and he didn't really go into full details about it. But he would always tell us that the police is down here is not our friends. They are because he would, like I said, he was a security officer, but he knew all the police officers. He was around all the police officers. Back then, the security office was in the police building, so he was around them. He knew how they treated us. So growing up, I know it sounds bad, but my family never, and still to this day, we never trust police officers. That's
Well, I
just
mean, we have collections of newspaper articles showing how the
right.
Klan in the
Right.
1920s marched
And
through Gainesville 10,000 strong alongside police
right.
officers.
Yes, and it started, and the racism started with the police officers. They started, so we, as my family, we know how corrupt it is. We know about the racism just because what my grandpa's told us. All my grandparents told us, my grandma and my grandpa told us. So they did tell us a little bit about, the hanging but like I said, he didn't really go into detail. So I don't really know a lot about it because it was very touchy with my grandpa. Very,
Sure.
very touchy.
So what
Very,
about you growing up as a kid, as an individual, as a young Black girl who was probably more often than not the only Black person in the classroom, or what I know that that's a heavy question to ask you to just summarize, but if you could, just to try to give people an idea, people think back to this idea of segregation is so long ago, and we have this concept of this modern integrated world,
right.
right? But in areas like yours, I mean, that's just not the reality. I mean, even now there are areas in Cooke County where there's only 2 Black kids in an entire school.
Right. There was very little. There was probably it was about 20 of us in the class, and there was probably only 2 African Americans. And we was treated very differently. Of course, I'm not even going to sit here and say that by teachers that I was treated the same as others. No, that was not the case. I was treated, the Black kids in the classrooms and the Black kids were treated very differently. And whenever I say they were treated very differently, like they would push the Caucasian kids, the white kids, they would push them to have 90s and 100s. But to them, 70s and stuff for us was okay. They would, if something go wrong, they would always go to the Black kids in the classroom. Something go wrong, it's always the Black kid fault. Or a fight happened at school, guess what? It's always the Black kid fault. So growing up was very difficult living here. I experienced racism. I still experience racism with my daughter. Chloe loves everybody because I teach her to love everybody, but not everybody is the same. She came, she would come home and say, "Mom, this little white kid, this little white girl, she can't hang with me because her mom said I was Black." So that's how it was when I was growing up as well. I couldn't go to the white people's house because I was Black. Even if, she was my friend, but her parents didn't agree of her having a Black friend. You know what I mean? So that's how I grew up. I couldn't go hang and spend a night with the white people because of their parents. They might have liked me or, thought me as a friend, but their parents didn't agree for them. So growing up, it was difficult. I mean, I couldn't have white friends, and not just because I didn't want the white friends. Their parents didn't want me having. Their parents didn't want them hanging with me because I was Black. Teachers treated us very differently. Like I stated, they treated us very differently. We was the cause of everything that went wrong. We was expected low grades. They wanted us to have low grades. They didn't help us. They didn't give us that extra help like they did the white kids. They thought 70s was good enough for us. They didn't think that we were above. Like they didn't think that 90s was good for us.
So yeah. As where they might intervene for white children in the classroom to help them accomplish their best by noticing they have a problem and intervening to help them get past that. Whereas maybe with a Black child like yourself, the teacher would just expect that, well, you're passing, that's good enough. Exactly. And they just expect that that's probably the best they're going to get out of you.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
And that certainly must shape some internal dialogue with yourself, wondering, are you capable of doing better than that? And it probably creates some real problems internally, thinking about who you are and the kind of expectations you can set for yourself.
Oh yeah, when I was in elementary, I thought, hey, teachers think 70s is good. I didn't learn that 70s wasn't good and that I was capable of doing more until I got to middle school and high school. Whenever you start thinking, oh no, that's not good. That 70 is not good. But in elementary, I thought it was perfectly fine. The teachers thought it was okay, so I thought it was fine. I thought this was the level that I was supposed to be at because I never got that extra help like others. I didn't start seeing that it was bad. I started seeing it, but I didn't start seeing that it was, hey, this is not fair until I got to like middle school and high school.
Did you ever have a Black teacher?
Nope. We had one, a Miss Summers. We sure did. I had one, and her name was Miss Summers, and she was in middle school. And that's why I said I started learning from her that 70s is not okay. I remember her, Miss Summers, and she put the black kids under her wings. And she was like, oh no, 70 is not good around here. She would tell us, if you don't get above 80, you're sitting in the hallway. She was really hard on us because she knew what we was capable of doing. You know what I mean? So yes, Miss Summers, she was our middle school. She was my middle school.
Did Miss Summers make it very long in the Gainesville teaching system?
Miss Summers was there for a very long time. But Miss Summers was very a strong lady. So Miss Summers carried her own. Miss Summers could carry her own. I mean, and I'm pretty sure she dealt with I'm sure she has stories that she can tell you, but Miss Summers was a very strong lady. So she was there for a very long time. I think she retired after 30, 40 years. But she was she was the only Black teacher.
Now, I know that there are histories of, at one point, Leonard Park in Gainesville was a whites-only park. That's one of the areas where there's one of two Confederate monuments that are in Cooke County and in Gainesville. The other one being on the Cooke County Courthouse lawn with its blatant testament to white supremacy. I know that obviously in the 50s, segregation in public spaces was officially outlawed, but as we see today, the law is not always followed. When you were a child, did you ever get to go to Leonard Park? Was it kind of because I know across the street from Leonard Park, there was also a park for Black people, right? So I'm just curious, we know that over time, a lot of times those invisible lines still exist and they are just kind of established in the community. So when you were a child, was that kind of segregated park experience still a thing?
Yes, it sure was. We went to the park across the street. We didn't go to the park. we went to that's the park that I grew up on. That's the park where we had our family events. That's the park that my grandpa took us to, and my grandma took us to, and my mom. So yeah, I went to the park across the street.
Of course, they tore down the park that was the traditionally, historically Black park in the area, of course. Was that why you started going to Leonard Park? Because they
Yes.
tore down your park?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to ask you a question because I see it over and over and over again in the comments of my videos. Whenever I post about Gainesville or Kaufman, or people say, get out of there. Why don't you just move? Get out of there. And of course, I always respond, well, it's not that simple. Like, people have lives here. It's where they grew up. This is where their family is. What if you can't afford to just pick up and take off with your entire family? You're just supposed to leave them behind, and and also just for me, I look at it as, no, you should be moving in.
Right.
Like, we should be looking to diversify these areas and take hold of power. But I wonder if you could speak on that. I mean, have you ever thought about moving? Have you ever thought about getting away and moving to a bigger city?
Yes, I thought about it, but the only thing, like you said, has been keeping me here is like my grandparents' grave is here. So I feel like if I move, like I'm moving away from them, if that makes sense. Because like I stated before, they helped my mom raise me. So they were big in my life. So I felt like if I moved away, that I was leaving them behind. But I have tremendously thought about moving. And one thing has stopped me from moving is, as well as everybody knows, that I'm on probation and I cannot but I'm telling you, if I was not, yes, I would definitely move. Racism is everywhere, but I feel like here in this small town, it's just getting worse and worse every day. That's how I feel. I feel like they're trying to push us out, and I feel like being here, I'm fighting it. I'm like, no, you're not going to make me leave, my kids, I have one in high school now. So my kids, they have friends here, and my mom's here, my sister's here, my family is here. So yes, I have thought about leaving several times. I have thought about leaving several times.
So let's talk about, I think that's an important part of the narrative too, if you don't mind. Can we talk about how you ended up on probation?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
When I was 18 years old, I was drawing food stamps, and I had started a job where I was getting very little wages. So I was on food stamps. Whenever I worked at that job for a little bit of time, I got a promotion, and I forgot to change. I was just gonna not even get off of food stamps. I was just gonna leave it alone and let it expire. Like I wasn't even about to go and change it, or because I didn't need the food stamps anymore. I think food stamps is temporarily. I think that is just whenever you're low and don't, like for people that need it. I felt like me getting that promotion, I became a supervisor at, WinStar, the world's largest casino. I became a supervisor. And I felt like I didn't need the food stamps anymore. So I wasn't going to go apply for it. But I guess whenever you put your social in, I don't know how it works, it rings a bell that I guess I got a promotion. I don't know how it worked. But I didn't report it to the food stamp office that I got a pay raise, and they got me for food stamp fraud. And my first offense ever, never been in any trouble, nothing on my background, nothing. And I went into court with Haverkamp. And Haverkamp.
I just want to interrupt you real briefly. I just want to clarify that at this point, you weren't even using the food stamps. A lot of people imagine food stamps as being like these legitimate stamps that you get. But in Texas, we have what we call the Lone Star card, the EBT Lone Star card. So it's just this card where they deposit funds, or not even funds, but they deposit an amount, and it's just good for groceries. But if you don't use it, it just sits there.
Right.
It doesn't cost the state anything. If you don't use it, it just sits there. So that's what you were doing. You were letting it fill up, but you weren't using the card. But you also weren't applying to renew them because you're required to go in. I think it's every 3 months or every 6 months you have to.
Every time I thought it was every like 6 months or whatever, but it's every time that you get a change an income or anything like that, you have to report that change. I didn't know. I was 18. I didn't know. I was just going to just not get on them anymore. Like I said, I got a promotion. I wasn't even going to get on food stamps anymore. I wasn't going to reapply for them anymore. So I didn't change it. So they got me for food stamp fraud.
Okay.
And
so then you go to court with Haverkamp, a notorious judge here in Denton. Or excuse me, in Gainesville, a notorious Gainesville judge.
And whenever I went under her, my last name was Franklin. And that played a big part in that. They gave me 10 years probation, $20,000 in court fees, and $10,000 in restitution probation fees.
So you're 18 years old. You are struggling. You're obviously impoverished if you're using food stamps, but you have done what was the right thing, which was worked to get a job, and worked your way to a supervisor position in that job. And because you made one reporting mistake, they sentenced you to 10 years probation, $10,000 in restitution. And what was the other?
$20,000 in court fees.
So technically, $30,000 in fines and 10 years probation, which is more than we've seen some rapists face.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And now wait a minute though. You're 36 now and you're still on probation.
Well, they didn't sentence me till I was later. I went to court when I was 18, 19, but they didn't sentence me till later on down the road. So
right, of course. So they've drug this out for as long as possible to hold it over you.
Right.
So now at 36 years old, you not only have to sustain your livelihood, you're trying to just live your life and have a family. But this mistake as an 18-year-old where you just forgot to report this change or didn't know the rules, because it's not like they lay them out easy for you or anything. And this is also before, I mean, this is not in a time where it's as easy as it is now, where you just go online and click a button. This was back in the day where you had to go to the office, you had to make an appointment, and every little thing is a big deal. You would have had to have taken off work just to do that, and you would have had to have read the 30-page packet front to back to know exactly what steps. They do that on purpose. So this has been held over you all this time, and so now you're trapped in Gainesville until you get out from under that.
I am. It's a felony. I can't leave that out.
It's a felony.
It's a felony. So I was applying for nursing, and I can't even apply for nursing because the board of nurses.
You can't go to nursing school because now you have a felony, which is why you found yourself working in just nursing care, but you can never achieve your goal of being an actual nurse because you forgot to report your supervising position when you were collecting food stamps as a young single mom at 18.
Right.
And this is what we're talking about when we talk about the systemic nature of racism. So can we give folks a little background on this Haverkamp and Franklin, your last name, and why those things are correlated, and why that had an impact on, why you think that had an impact on your sentencing?
Sure. My uncles got into a little bit of trouble whenever I wasn't born yet, but while they were younger, they got into a little bit of trouble. And they have to face Haverkamp more than one time. My grandpa have got onto Haverkamp more than one time as well. So she's seen that ugly side of my grandpa as well. So every Franklin that goes in her court, best believe we're going to walk out there with 10 plus years. We're not going to go any less. She's not going to give us any less. Every Franklin that walks in her court is going to, we know that we're going to leave out of there. We're going to have 10 up. Either it's going to be probation time or it's going to be prison time. She has sent 4 out of 6 of my uncles to prison.
And I mean, this is okay. This is really important when we think about this in the scheme of like the fact that during last summer when we were having peaceful protests against Confederate monuments on the Cooke County lawn, and the chief of police decided to, after his officers escorted our peaceful march down the street right alongside us and allowed us to cross the road, the chief of police goes on 3 days later to issue arrest warrants for Black community leaders at the front of the protest for obstructing a highway,
right,
for jaywalking. So this is the type of community where the police chief can simply be mad at what you're doing, come up with some BS charges, and throw you in front of a judge who's willing to uphold that and escalate it just for the simple fact of teaching Black folks their place.
Yep.
Right? Gainesville, by all definition, from what I understand in my conversations with you and other Black community members, which I'm just so grateful. I've learned so much from the Black community in Gainesville because everyone has been so open to just share their experiences with me over time. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to make assumptions here, but I just feel like I've really been blessed with an opportunity to speak with so many and learn from so many of you. But it really seems to me like Gainesville is a sundown town. I mean, there are after dark, Black people know that there are places they go and places they don't go, and there are places they go alone and there are places they don't go alone, because it's just an understood. If you don't want any trouble from the police, you better stay home.
You're right. We got a rule here. We did not leave after 9 o'clock. That's why whenever I called you earlier, I went ahead and shot to Walmart. We do not leave our house after 9 because the police will stop you if you're Black, and they will harass you, and they will take you to jail for a light being out, a simple tail light being out. So we got a rule in this house, and we grew, I mean, and I install it in my kid's head. I have a teenager when he was out driving. You're here by 9, or you're somewhere where you're going to be at and not leave by 9. Because after 9, it's just, the police will just mess with you for no reason. They'll find anything to mess with you. Like I said, a simple tail light will make you be in jail for the night for a simple tail light, So.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that people don't think about. People envision this idea of a sundown town as a place where, like, Black people aren't allowed to be after dark, but really it's kind of evolved, right, into this, again, this like modern, way of the modern policing system was born out of the idea of limiting the movements of enslaved persons and then limiting the movements of recently freed persons, right? And so now it still functions as this regulatory force against, BIPOC, and in your community in particular, against Black persons. Now, I know that there is a Latino community there in Gainesville to some degree. I've spoken with a few community members, but I haven't had the opportunity to really engage with that community much. So I certainly don't want to speak on their behalf or make any assumptions about their experience. But I do know that the few I've spoken to have shared similar experiences to what you're describing. I mean, they also are not reaping the benefits of white privilege in the Gainesville community. Yep. So all of this said, I want to flash forward now. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the main reason for our conversation, which is, of course, the harassment and discrimination that you experienced at your job recently. But I still want to just kind of shape. I know there have been other things that have gone on, and I just want to make sure that I kind of share your experience in a totality. I want to give you an opportunity to really kind of create a picture for people about what it's like to live in that area. So I want to talk about the instance, and you'll have to remind me, what's your oldest son's name?
Traylon.
Traylon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Traylon.
You'll have to remind me about the incident that occurred with him that was similar to the one, of course, that we all know ended in Ahmaud Arbery being murdered, which is why I find that story so tragic and terrifying when you told me the first time. When did that occur?
He left for school and he left for college in August, So he started working out when he got his offer. He got his offer around June. So he
And what
started.
offer was that? Let's tell folks what that is.
Yeah, he got a scholarship to play quarterback in Kansas. So he got a football scholarship for quarterback in Kansas.
Which also considered his grades and academic work too, I'm sure. He worked very hard for that. I know he did.
Yes. Very smart, no trouble kid, never been in trouble by the laws, never been in, he didn't get in trouble at all. He was my good kid. He was a quarterback. He took them to the playoffs here in Gainesville. He was a starting quarterback here in Gainesville. So he did get a scholarship for football.
Yeah.
But it did start around June.
This is about the same time, June 2020?
Yes.
And so this was about the same time you started working at Wheeler Place, which
Correct.
Wheeler Place is a live-in residential facility for the elderly.
Yes.
And so you are a care technician, or you were a care technician there.
Yes.
And so about the same time you start working there is when this incident occurred.
Correct.
Okay.
He was running around the community, running around our community. He would run, jog, he would work out. That was his way of working out. It was COVID season, so he couldn't go to the gyms. So he would find a way to do it out at the house, run around the neighborhood. So one day he was running around the neighborhood, and he said he would listen. He had his headphones in. So he said a big old tow truck just ran up and just ran up and stopped him while he was running. And he was like blowing the horn, and he like heard something. So he took his headphones out, and he said he turned around, and it was big old tow truck company. And it was a guy driving. And he was like, hey boy. That's what he kept saying to him. And he was like, yeah. My son was like, yeah, what's up? And he was like, are you the boy running around robbing? Are you the little black boy? That's what he said. Are you the little black boy running around robbing houses around the community? And my son said he gave him kind of like a look. And my son he had his phone in his pocket. Like I said, he had his headphones in there. He had his phone in his pocket. And he was like, Mom, I didn't know if I should reach for my phone to report him, reach for my phone to call. So he said he didn't. He was like, I wanted to record him. I wanted to call y'all and tell, because like you said, he was just right around the corner from the house. He said, I wanted to call my dad and tell him, hey, this grown man is, but he was like, I didn't reach for my phone or nothing, because he was scared. He didn't know what he had. He didn't know if he was going to think he was reaching out for a gun. So my son said he just stopped running. He remained calm. And he said, no. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, I run around the neighborhood just for exercise. And he goes, well, Lynn, my next door neighbor. And my son was like, okay, and he was like, she's my next door neighbor, and she's your mom's boss. Lynn Homer, she's your mom's boss. And she told me that you're the black boy that's breaking in these homes. And my son was like, well, she told you wrong, because I don't have to break in homes. That's not what I'm about. He goes, he was like, well, there's some couple black boys running around here, and you fit the description, because and Lynn told us, and no doubt that it was you. And he came home and he told us. I went and approached that same night. I went to Wheeler Place. Well, that next morning, I went to Wheeler Place, and at the time, told my director Radley Chase, what was going on, and he said he would take care of it. I called a tow company. I blasted them on Facebook. I called them and called the police, made a report. Nothing came out of that. And later on, we found out that nothing was going to come out of it, because she's dating the chief of police. So
yeah, now's a good time to point out the fact that still currently, and also at that time, Lynn Homer, who was also your direct supervisor at Wheeler Place, who this gentleman reported, informed him that your son was this criminal. she is the girlfriend of the chief of police in Gainesville, Texas, Kevin Phillips, or who I call chief terrorist of
Right.
Gainesville, Kevin Phillips. That's my name for him. So, at this point, had you already been having, I know that, again, this is about the time that things kind of started getting weird for you at work. Was this kind of the turning point? Was this the real like point? Did things kind of pick up from here, or had they already started? Or
Oh yes, I turned her in. After that, I turned her into HR. I turned her into the director, Taylor. Well, she wasn't. It wasn't her at the time. It was another lady. Taylor is fairly new, but I turned her into the corporate, and that's when the retaliation really started. You know, I was seeing some stuff before, but when I turned her into corporate and all that, that's when the retaliation and the really bad discrimination started against me.
and
Yes.
corporate being Enlevant. That's the corporation who owns Wheeler Place, and from what I've researched, a lot of live-in residential elderly care facilities throughout the country.
Yes,
there are several here in North Texas. So, did anyone at corporate ever follow up with you? Was there ever any kind of official, HR investigation? Did you feel like they took it seriously?
No, they didn't take it serious at all. I would call them several times. You know me, I wasn't recording until now.
Now
but,
you know.
Yes, now I know. Most definitely. Since I've been working with you, now I know to record.
I can drill that into anybody's head. I will too. We don't have conversations with anybody without a record button on, right?
Right. So I was just sending a lot of emails, which you got several of my emails. I was just sending a lot of emails and calling, and I didn't get anything. And at the time, I don't know if this makes, it might sound a little bit selfish on my end, but I could not push that because my financial situations. And
sure, you got to feed your kids. You got to pay your bills.
Right. So I could not push it to the limit of, I done what I needed to do. I called the EEOC. This is my second time calling the EEOC, third time calling the EEOC. So I done that to that extent, but I couldn't take it and put it, even whenever I put it on social media, I was told to take that down off of social media.
Were you told that by Human Resources?
I was told that by my director, Radley Chase, at the time.
So when you were making these reports to Human Resources, because at this point, what was happening is, and we can tell this, I was able to tell it when first thing I told you to do, right, was send me like all your emails, send me everything so we could create a timeline. And it's very clear to see, this kind of increasing microaggressions is what it seemed like to me. That's really what I read from the scenario, right? Like you called her out. And I should also point out, this is also your neighbor, Lynn Homer. Also, she lives right there. You guys all live together. This is a small town. I mean, you guys live a few houses away from one another. Right. And so this woman who is your neighbor and your boss, decides to spread a rumor that your son is this, criminal because he's running around the neighborhood preparing to go to college for his quarterback scholarship after he took the local football team to state finals. What a way to say thank you, right?
Right.
So it seemed to me like it just became increasing microaggressions regarding changing your schedule. You took the job with the understanding that you could work these specific shifts because you have kids and you need to pick them up after school, and these kind of procedures on the ways that notifications should be sent out regarding changing your schedule or switching with people just weren't being followed. I mean, you would just be told, I think at one point you had to work like 15 days in a row or something. They kept changing your schedule so you didn't have a day off. And am I kind of recapping this right?
Yeah, you're right. And yes, and like I said, I was out sick at one time because stress, and I was losing a lot of blood. I'm anemic really bad. And the stress of the job and stuff when I was dealing with all that was causing me, at one time I got out and I had to have a blood transfusion. And when I got back, and let me state this too. Whenever I ended up in the hospital, I did text Lynn and Radley. I put them in a group chat. And I did tell him that I was in the hospital. And the message that I got back from him, he thought it was Lynn. He said, interesting. Holly just called in and said she was in the hospital. Interesting. I think I got that text. I'm going to send that to you later.
You never sent me that.
Yeah. He said, interesting. And I said, this is Holly. What are you talking about? He thought he sent it to Lynn, but I had put him in a group message, and he didn't know.
Realize.
He didn't realize that I put him in a group message, and he thought he forwarded it to Lynn and said, interesting, this is what I received from Holly. So he thought I was kind of lying about that, I guess. Like, you know, like I would lie about being in the hospital. And I was like, I can show you documents that I'm in the hospital. But several times, not just one incident, when I come back from being off my 2 days, I'm working 15 days straight just to have another day, 1 day off, working another 7 days straight, to have 2 days off sometimes, working another. And we were supposed to be on a 4-on, 2-off situation. But what they would do, they would fill me in on every shift that somebody wanted to be off. Or if somebody, you know, without even asking me. I was the only one that they done that to.
You were the workhorse.
Yep. Whenever they needed me, whenever somebody else, and to take the notes, whenever I wanted a day off, I would have to ask someone to switch with me, or, you know, fill out a paper, schedule change paper, and get it approved by Lynn to get a schedule swap with somebody. She would make me ask somebody to do a schedule swap. But whenever somebody else, you know, wanted a day off, I was not asked. And I've mentioned that in my text messages too. I was never asked, you know, if they could come in or if I had anything to do I would just get put on the schedule for 15 days, 14 days. Mm-hmm. And it's just something that I dealt with because, like I said, I needed my job. So it was just something that I dealt with. I mean,
the treatment in general was bad. I mean, you've even had, since we've gone public with this, of course, there's the usual Karens, as I like to call them on the internet, who have come forward and said, oh, Holly's being dramatic. She's telling lies. She's just trying to get people in trouble because she got fired. And even some of your white coworkers who worked there with you have come forward on social media to say, no, you weren't there. And yeah, Holly was treated terribly. Now, granted, it would have been nice if they would have come forward and said that in real time, but they were probably just as desperate for their job as you. But again, white people, if you're listening, say something at the time instead of afterwards. But I mean, you've even had people come forward to vouch for you, that just the daily environment imposed by Lynn Homer, your direct supervisor, was really hostile.
Yeah, she was. It was a hostile work environment. She showed me that she didn't like me. You know how some people, you know, they got to tell you, or, you know, for you to get, no. She showed me in her daily actions that she did not like me at all. And I would ask her, and I don't know if you received these text messages, but I would ask her, hey, what's the deal? What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Why do you not like me? Are you intimidated by me? Because you're the one with the RN license, not me. You know what I mean? You're the one that's a nurse, and for you to be racist towards me and you're taking care of people, that's kind of scary. You're taking care of all colors. When you're a nurse, you just don't go into the hospital and say, I just want to care for white people. You know, you go in there and you're supposed to be taking care of everybody, all colors. So that's kind of scary to me. But
well, so what about that? Can I ask you about that? Did you ever notice people being treated, or is there a diverse clientele in Wheeler Place in Gainesville? And did you notice any difference in treatment?
There is not. One time, and I don't want to say her name on here, but one time there was a Black lady that came in, and she, to just look around and see if she wanted that to be her home. We didn't have any Black residents in there. You know, I don't think that they ever had any Black residents in there. I'm positive that they didn't. But there was a Black elderly lady that came in and toured the place, and when she left, she kind of judged her. She looked over at the man, our marketing man that, you know, put people there. She looked over at him and was like, I don't think she can afford it.
That's what Lynn Homer said?
And I looked back at her and I said, yeah, she can. I know her. She knows my grandfather. She was friends with my grandfather and my grandmother. She can afford it. And she probably could afford everybody else that lives in here. She probably can afford their rent too. So I said, yeah, she can afford it. You know, so that's the response that she put out there in front of me, made it very clear, you know. She was like, I'm like, and I asked her, I said, can I ask you why you don't think she can afford that? Well, looking at her income, she tried to change it. Looking at her income that I'm looking at, it doesn't look like she can afford that. And I'm like, yeah, she can. So, yeah, that was one of the incidents. I'm sure there was many, but that was the one that I experienced.
Were you the only Black person working there?
No, I wasn't. There was at the time, but when I first started working there for about 6-7 months while I was working there, we had a Black cook, and he also experienced some racial, so he quit as well. And I don't know if he wants to bring his name in, so I'm not
sure. Yeah, no problem.
But he also experienced racism, so he quit because of racism.
I guess maybe now is a good time to talk about how this all came down. You had gotten sick, as you said. This was serious. You had to have a blood transfusion, and you had been out for work, and then coming back, things got increasingly hostile with discussions about, you being, and you weren't gone long. I mean, how long were you off of work?
I was about to be gone for 2. I wasn't gone yet. They called on my day that I was about to be out for surgery for 2 weeks.
Right.
I had some stuff going on with my blood and stuff that they were going to have to go in and fix. So I was going to be out for 2 weeks. And they called me on that Friday. Well, they texted me on that Friday.
That's when it all blew up. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the text message. And when I put this video together, I'm gonna put it in there for folks to see, but I can't remember it right off the top of my head. But basically, this stuff had been increasing. There'd been some emails going back and forth with you, basically standing up for yourself, saying, listen, I have to take this time off. This is what I have to do. And there had been some things leading up to this. And then all of a sudden you get a text message in a group text. And that group text message is Lynn Homer and Michelle Criswell. Michelle Criswell. And Michelle Criswell is
the
director of the facility, who took over after the other individual that you were talking about. So you get this group text message where Michelle Criswell is tied in, and she says that basically she has, due to concerning text messages that she's received, supposedly sent by you, claiming, she doesn't even say any details at this point. She's going to have to place you on temporary leave pending an investigation.
Correct.
And you're just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, and I said, okay, I'm lost. That was I put, okay, I'm lost. Because I didn't know.
And at that point, you're about to go into surgery. I mean, you don't even know what to even think of this.
Right, because that happened on that Sunday. That Monday, I was going into surgery. That Friday, before I left, I sent I worked 2 to 10 shift. Before I left, I gave them time to I think I sent it when I got there on my break. I think about 4:00 p.m. I wrote a long email about discrimination and them changing my schedule, me not getting the lead position because Lynn not liking me. And even the other girl even told him, hey, I don't want this position. Give it to Holly. She's put in for it, But she said, well,
I just want to clarify, you were overlooked on top of everything else. Something had come up. There was a new lead position available that you applied for, and you were the only person that applied for it.
Yes, the only person.
You were the only person who applied for the position, but they gave it to a white woman who said she didn't want it.
Right. Just because Lynn did not, she would be directly over me because she was already directly over me, but I would be the lead, so I would be more involved with her more side by side because she was over the med. She was our nurse at the facility. So I would be working with her side by side, and she didn't want that.
So you write this email. This is kind of like the final straw for you. And you can
Yeah.
tell in the email, because you're kind of in this email, you kind of, you summarize everything that's been going on. And this is just kind of this culminating thing for you where you're just saying, look, like, this is wrong. This is discrimination. This is racial harassment. This is something I've been enduring and it's been ongoing. And so it's that same evening after you send that email that you get this text message.
It was the very next. It was
the next day.
On Friday, they sent me that text message. They sent me that text message on Sunday. So
okay. So you sent the email Friday.
Without a response to that email on Friday. They didn't even respond to that email on Friday.
Right.
They send me that text message on Sunday. It's like they had to work up something.
Right. So you get the text message, but then I know communication continues a little bit. You don't get anything else about the text message. Initially, the text says that she's received images of text messages that you sent. Mm-hmm. But then what happens next?
Wednesday, I done a follow-up with her. The next Wednesday, I done a follow-up with Michelle. And I said, hey, Michelle, can I get HR's number? Can I get an update? Because I don't know what's going on. All I got.
And this isn't a text message.
Mm-hmm. This is a text message. I said, hey, can I get HR's number? Can you tell me what's going on? And her response was, I'm sorry or something. I've been caught up. We'll get back with you today. Well, she didn't get back to me till not even the next day she got back with me. Maybe it was the day after. I think 2 days later, she got back with me finally. And she called me and she said, hey, we received an email. And I said, an email? And she said, no, she said text messages. I said, text messages from my phone? And she said, no, email. And then she had me on three-way with Lynn. And she said, and I heard her say, Lynn, was that an email or text message? What was it? And Lynn said, no, it was Facebook messages. And I was like, okay, because I don't communicate on Facebook, so I'm confused. I said, can I see these Facebook messages? Because that's not me. I don't write Facebook messages. So I said, that's not me. I said, can I see these Facebook messages? And she said,
at this point, had they given you any idea as to what they still hadn't told you what was supposedly in these messages?
They didn't tell me they told me that I had supposedly sent some text messages to another coworker at the time. They did not tell me that coworker's name. They said that I supposedly sent some text message to another coworker and said that I abused an elderly woman, which they told me her name, which I don't want to say her name, but that I abused an elderly person at the facility. So they were going to have to terminate me. Any other information, I would need to contact HR.
And I want to clarify at this point. So first you get the text saying that they received questionable text messages. Then you call and the story evolves over the phone from text messages to an email to Facebook messages.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then it's and they claim that it's screenshots of Facebook messages that you sent to this other employee, but they can't tell you the name of the employee who got them. They can't tell you. They can't show you the messages. They can't tell you exactly what the messages say. But within these messages, you supposedly claim to have hurt one of the patients, one of the residents, who I think now is a good time to point out is the only resident with dementia in the facility.
She's not the only one, but she was the only dementia resident that required a 2-person lift.
Right. So nobody goes in the room alone.
Nobody goes in the room alone. It takes 2 persons. It takes 2 people to change her. It takes 2 people to take her a bath. It takes 2 people to go, she's just a 2-person. That's what her family paid.
But she's also an individual who is, of all the residents there, she would be the one least capable of coming to your defense or saying anything regarding the actual scenario, or she would be the resident least capable of saying, no, this didn't happen.
I will give you an example. She thinks half the time she thinks she's still a little kid at home,
right?
So she's she's far from dementia,
right. So you get this call wraps up and you're just kind of dumbfounded. What happens after the phone call?
I basically pointed at him. I said, "Hey, I need HR's number." She still didn't give it to me. I said, "I need HR's number." I said, "Why haven't state called me?" I said, "Why haven't HR called me? Why haven't corporate called me?" Those are the questions that I asked Michelle. And she said, "I can't verify that. I don't know. I'm not for sure. But you will need to contact them. I can't tell you anything else."
And the reason you asked about state is because, of course, as a residential live-in facility, like they are caring for patients in a medical capacity, there are certain requirements. They're different for each state, but in the state of Texas, should they think that there's certain requirements in the Texas law issued just for the elderly. So should this facility and your supervisors really have believed, had they conducted this investigation that they claim to have conducted and determined that you, in fact, had injured a member of their residency, and believed it to be so true that they had to fire you, they would then also be obligated by law to report that to the state.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
But that never happened.
That never happened. State did not call me. HR is supposed to call me as well. Living in working at a assisted living, HR is supposed to call you and contact you as well and tell you what's going on and give you more details of what's going on. HR did not contact me as well.
So then you're fired, right? Mm-hmm. They tell you you're fired, and you ask for more information, and they tell you, I believe it was Michelle that you emailed and asked for more, and Taylor. She responded. I'm sorry?
Taylor. It was Taylor.
Taylor, right. You emailed and she responds, we're not, it was an internal investigation. We're not obligated to share anything with you, I believe is what she said. And then things go from bad to worse. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what happens next?
Then probably a week later, I get a knock on my door from detective. What is his name?
Detective Young.
Yes, Detective Young, and there was another detective with him as well. I didn't catch his name because I was too upset. He came over and he first thing when I opened the door, he said, "Hey, Holly." He said, "Hey, Miss Tatum," and I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "What's going on with you and Ashley Pittner?" And I was like, "Ashley Pittner? I don't even remember the dang girl's name because I hadn't worked with her long, She had quit whenever I stopped working there. She was no longer working there at the facility. She had quit 2 weeks. We were all taking over her shifts. So she wasn't even working there anymore whenever I was there. And I was like,
so Ashley Pittner was a patient care. I'm sorry, what's the term again?
Resident care partner.
Resident care partner like you, but on a different shift, right?
She was on third shift. And she, like I said, she quit. She was no longer working there whenever I worked there. She had quit like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, nothing's going on with me and Ashley Pittner. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I got some screenshots that you're threatening her and through Facebook messages. And I said, those are the Facebook messages that I've been trying to see because I'm not, I said, that's not me. Those are not my Facebook messages. And I said, can I see those Facebook messages? And he showed them to me. And my first response to him was like, no, this is not me. This is not me.
What did you see when he showed you the screenshots? Like, what did you actually see? Was he showing them to you on his device, or were they printed out, or
on his phone?
So he pulled them up on his phone. Were they like screenshots?
They were screenshots, yes.
Of a Facebook chat. Mm-hmm. And this, what you see is a profile that's communicating with Ashley Pittner's Facebook page.
He just showed me the screenshots, and you know how it has a little circle with my face on it, like the profile with my face. I said, yeah, that was my picture. But I no longer have that picture. on my phone. I said that was my profile, but again, my Facebook was not private, so you could, now it is, but you could get in on my Facebook and screenshot my pictures off of there.
So
And I,
somebody had used a picture, a profile picture that you had used previously. It wasn't the one you were currently using, but
yeah,
and then they had created a profile using your same name. Did the name appear like it appears on your Facebook page now?
he couldn't show me. I said, could you show me the actual page? Because all I'm seeing is the screenshots and the little picture. That's all I saw. I didn't
It didn't
see.
even say your name.
No, they didn't even say my name. And I said, can I see that profile? I want to see that profile because in parentheses on my profile, I got Holly Franklin in parentheses on my profile. On my Facebook profile, I got Holly Franklin in parentheses. And I asked to see that that profile, and he said, "Oh, it's no longer there. It's erased." That's what the Detective Young said. He said, "That's no longer there anymore. It's erased. So no, I can't show you that profile because we don't have it." So I said, "Y'all are going off a screen." I said, "Y'all are going off of screenshots that she sent you that y'all didn't even see the profile." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, he said, "Yeah, basically." He goes, "Can we see your phone?" I said, "Sure." I said, I don't have nothing to hide. So
Before you go on to that, I want to ask you. I'm sorry to cut you off. This is actually, we've communicated so much by text message. This is and a few brief phone calls, but this is actually our first really in-depth conversation, right. And I've gone through so much of it, so it's just really helpful for me to kind of pick into this a little bit. Were you able to read exactly what those messages said?
Mm-hmm. I was.
What do you recall? How many of them were there, and what do you recall reading in those messages that someone sent impersonating you?
Yeah, on one of the messages, it was going back and forth with her, like, "I'm gonna shoot you. You don't know me. I'm gonna shoot you." That was the person impersonating me that was saying to her, "You don't know me. I'm gonna shoot you." And then she said something back like, "Why are you acting like this? Why are you being rude to me? I haven't done anything to you." And the person impersonating me was like, "I don't give a damn about you. I abused an elderly person. I abused, said her name. So it has to be somebody at that facility because they said the resident's name that I was supposedly."
Whoever impersonated you definitely worked there because they knew the name of the resident. Right. I see what you're saying.
And then on down, it was just going back and forth, like, "I'm gonna whoop you. You don't know me." And one of them was like, "Michelle and Lynn don't even like you. They don't even like you. They wanted you gone. They don't even like you." That's what one of the text messages said. They said Michelle and Lynn. So that was another clue that somebody that works there because they know Michelle and Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the text messages said that.
Were you able to catch dates on those at all?
The dates was
marked out. Okay, I see. Okay, so at this point, you the other officer, the other detective asked to see your phone.
He was going through my phone while I was looking through the text messages. Mm-hmm. So he was going through my phones while I was looking through it, and he went to he said, "Could you?" He gave me back my phone, and he said, "Can you take me to your my recent activities?" And I took him to the recent activity part, and he got my phone. He got my phone again and went through all the recent activities. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't see." And he looked over at Young, and he handed me back my phone, and he said, "Yeah, I don't see anything in her phone."
So they were able to look at your phone, look at your Facebook page, determine that there was only one page connected to your phone, that it had not sent those messages, that it was not that profile, that you didn't send those messages.
They went through my activity. They went through my messages. They went through everything. Yeah. And he looked at Young and he was like, "Yeah, I don't see anything in her phone."
So then what happens?
And then I asked Young, I said, "Hey, can I get the text messages or whatever?" He was like, "No, he can't. He couldn't give me the text messages, of course." And he goes, "But before I leave, I want to tell you, do not contact anybody from Wheeler Place. He said
That's the final message from the detective visiting your home is no more contact with anyone at Wheeler Place. Because at this point, you had still sent a couple of messages saying, hey, I want to talk to HR. Hey,
right.
I need some more feedback about what's going on. So at this point, the only communications you're having with anyone related to Wheeler Place is related to wanting some explanation as to why you were fired.
Right. Because I didn't even know who the person was until detectives came. I didn't even know who the person was that I was supposed to be threatening until the detective came and told me her name, that she was, that she done the charges against me and told me her name. So, yeah. So, and before he left, that was all he said was, do not have any contact with any employees from Wheeler Place.
And so maybe now's a good time to point out the fact that while you didn't really have any kind of direct relationship with Ashley Pittner, you had maybe had a couple of casual dialogues in passing, but you really never had any kind of relations whatsoever at work. But you do know that Ashley and Lynn happen to be friends. They hang out outside of work.
Yes, they do. When Lynn actually hired her and another girl, because they hang out and drink. So hired them actually awful. She hired them at her house, if that makes sense. She didn't even hire them at the job. I mean, they came in for an interview. I saw Ashley come in for an interview, but she already had the job before she came in from the interview. And that's what Ashley told us as well. So he told us that as well. So
so then let's you have this first visit, and it's after this first visit that you and I get connected. Yeah, that's when I can't remember who gave you my information. Whoever, you don't have to say their name right now. Let's not put a target on them, but thank you to that individual for connecting it. That's when you and I got connected, and I just kind of started compiling information and putting the timeline together, and you went ahead and you followed up with the EEOC, because you had already complained to the EEOC a couple of times, but it's at this point that you follow back up with the EEOC and you're like, okay, I've been fired now. This is obviously just a ploy, that this is a plot that has gone to the point of they're now making false complaints to the police department. And at this point, as far as you know, there's just this one incident that has been reported to police, right?
That's the only incident that I was told about.
Right. So you just know that it's this Ashley Pittner person has also reported these Facebook messages to the police. So the EEOC begin an investigation, and we have the paperwork on that. And in your correspondence with them, they explain to you that, this looks like discrimination to them too, because you have all your emails documenting how you've been making these complaints, how you've been pushing to HR to highlight this ongoing racial discrimination and harassment. And then right after you send this email, now you're fired after these mysterious messages, right?
Right.
Which don't even make sense. I mean, why would you randomly start messaging someone and being like, oh, by the way, I committed a felony assault against an elderly person, bitch, and calls them with all these bad names, piss them off, and then give them ammunition to hurt you, right? I mean, the whole thing is so absurd. So you call the EEOC, we begin kind of looking into this, and then I think it's just a few days later, you notice increasing drive-bys of the police. The police start rolling through more frequently, and your street is not a thoroughfare. This is a street that they have to come down, turn around, go back.
Right.
So they're going out of their way to make sure that you see them rolling through.
Right. They stop a couple houses down and sit there for a minute.
Making sure you see them. Yeah, I mean, we know this. And it's important to point out, this isn't new behavior. I mean, this is textbook behavior for police across the country, but in Gainesville in particular, when we had the protests going on last summer, the Black community leaders that were leading those protests to calling for the removal of the Confederate monument, the police did the same thing. We had to install security surveillance systems at 4 different residences of Black community leaders because they were being terrorized by the police coming and sitting outside. People were graffitiing racial slurs outside their homes. So this is not new, that when a Black person in Gainesville starts speaking up and out about racial discrimination or harassment, the response by police is to try to intimidate you into silence.
Oh yeah, it started happening, and it's still going on now, but it started happening. They would stop at the corner, and they would they would stop right there behind my car, my driveway, and look at my tags or something like that, anything.
So that goes on for a few days, and then Detective Young and the other detective come back again.
Yes, they come back again. 2 weeks later, they came back again. And he said, I know you, because I've been blowing up his phone and leaving him multiple messages. He never responded back because I wanted to see if he got anything back from Facebook.
Because that's right. Let's jump back for a minute. So the first visit, he also told you that he would be submitting a subpoena to Facebook to get the records, to get the what they do is they're able to get a judge to sign a subpoena calling for the records where Facebook can trace any account that's created. They can trace that back to usually an IP address, but they can always trace it back to the email that it was created with, or they can always trace it to something, but usually they can get it to an IP address. As someone who has been involved in multiple cases where online harassment has occurred, and worked directly with police back in the day when I thought they were worth working with. I know for a fact that Facebook is not only capable, they are willing. So just so you know, if you're out there trying to conduct illegal activities on Facebook, that is not the place, because they will hand you over at the drop of a hat. But they will turn that around. So he tells you he's going to do that. So then he comes back the second time. And what happens?
Yeah, he comes back the second time and he goes, "Hey, Miss Tatum, I know you've been trying to reach out to me, but I was already planning to come and stop by your house to give you an update on everything on Facebook, to give you an update on Facebook." So he's
like, "I know I've been ignoring you, but I just thought I'd continue to do that and come up at my own time without giving you any notice, because I'm the law and you don't matter."
Basically, yeah. Yeah, that's what he said. And he said, the first thing I want to talk about is, he said, "The first thing I want to let you know is we cannot get the Facebook messages we can't see who done it through Facebook." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "What I done was I put it in as a misdemeanor. Like if they caught somebody doing it, it would have been a misdemeanor." And he said, "I put it in as a misdemeanor. And when I done that, Facebook will not go any further." He said, "It's not a felony offense," is what he told me. He said, "I could not put it in as a felony offense because it's not a felony offense." So he said, with that not being a felony offense, Facebook will not pay the millions of dollars that they have to pay to go into deep, try to find out who sent that.
I just want to take this time to clarify that Detective Young, obviously we know, is a fucking liar. That is not true. Facebook will fulfill any subpoena signed by a judge, misdemeanor or not. And it does not cost them millions to click a button and pull an IP address. But I have seen it done for less. In Denton, Texas, Breonna Breedlove was placed in jail in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in a jail cell with a murderer after 2 white women claimed she threatened to hurt them over a Snapchat. So I know for a fact that when they want to, those cops can get whatever information they want to weaponize against people when they want to. So I just want to clarify that is BS. So he tells you he can't get the information, and then what else does he tell you?
And then he said, whenever your mom and sister was over here the first time that I was over here, and I said, "Yeah, yes," and he goes, "The Black Cadillac that they were driving? And I said, no. I said, we don't have my they have Tahoes, you know, we don't drive we don't have anybody in my family to drive a black Cadillac. So no, I don't know the black Cadillac they was driving. And he goes, oh, they wasn't driving a black Cadillac that day? And I said, not at all. I said, nowhere near close to a black Cadillac they was driving. And he goes, well, I thought everything was fine because I haven't had any conversation with Ashley in a couple weeks. So I thought everything was fine until she got her tires sliced again and someone going by throwing something at her face or something, he said. Someone threw something at the car at her face. And he goes, and I know that's true because we took pictures of her face. Someone, and she said it was 2 female African Americans. And I said, yeah, that's not me. That's not my family. I said, first of all, we don't drive. And I said, this is kind of weird. I said, the first time you came over, you said there was someone threatening her in a white Cadillac.
Right.
Two African American males with dreads.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you I didn't know anybody with dreads in my family. And I didn't know anybody with the white Cadillac. Now, someone threatened her and going by messing up her car with with a black Cadillac and 2 African American females. I said, that's kind of weird. I said, that's just not making sense to me. And
don't you love it when they can't keep their own story straight?
Right. And he goes, well, you need to tell whoever's doing it, or if you know whoever's doing it. I think someone's probably taking up for you. I said, not at all. I said, not at all. He said, well, I think someone's taking up for you, or if you know someone that's doing it, tell them to stop because we put thousands of dollars of cameras outside her house. And I said, oh, okay. Well, that's good for her to protect her. I said, but I said, nobody in my family's doing that. So you're accusing me and my family of doing that to her is what you're doing. No, not at all. I said, yeah, you are. You just told me that you think it's someone that's taken up for me, or you don't think it's me. He said, I don't think it's you, but he thinks that someone's taken up for me. And it's, you know, but he goes, you better tell them to stop because it's a felony. It's a felony if they get caught because we put up thousands of dollars of cameras at our house. So
the police in Gainesville install surveillance equipment for white women when they feel threatened, apparently?
Right. He said they put up thousands of cameras at her house.
Which we know is also probably BS, but who knows at this point.
Uh-huh.
So at this point, you call me and I am pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond, we're both pissed.
Uh-huh.
And we decide that the best course of action is we get you in touch with the ACLU,
uh-huh.
Right? We start that ball rolling. We had already decided that we needed to get surveillance installed at your home. Once they come by again, we had already been increasingly concerned with the harassment. And so we had decided we needed to put together an online campaign to fund the installation of cameras and surveillance at your home, but also in the rural area that you're in. We needed to get you good Wi-Fi, which is not cheap to do in your area. So, we had already been kind of putting the pieces together to put that campaign forward. But then I advised you to go to the police department with an advocate, a pro-Gainesville advocate. Tori Lynn Henderson went with you. We arranged it to the next day, I believe. You go. Right. And the goal was at this point, our mindset is, okay, somebody's obviously impersonating you. And this person has now cost you your job. This is online fraud, harassment, stalking, right? It's all the things because this person has impersonated you and they have already caused you to lose your job. But now because of what this person has done, it's leading to you being harassed by police because, at this point, my concern is that what if now someone comes to retaliate against your family? Because in this little town, all it takes is for one white woman to cry.
Right.
And there's going to be a mob of people outside your house.
Exactly.
Because, so my thought was, let's get a police report documenting you as a victim. Because at this point, we're thinking Ashley Pittner has a police report, right? Where she's documented as a victim and you're a supposed suspect. So my thought is, let's make sure we start controlling the narrative here and documenting what's going on and get a police report with you listed as a victim because you are being victimized too.
Right.
So you go, and that's when things get interesting. And I do have the audio recordings from when you guys went to the police department. And basically, long story short, you go into the lobby and you ask to file a police report, and instead of them sending out a patrol officer to take your report, which is what should have happened, they send out
Detective Young.
And he proceeds to explain to you for I think like 20 minutes why he can't take your report. Right.
It was a good 20-30 minutes where he was just constantly telling us why we already got reports on this, is what he kept saying. Why do I need to take yours? And we kept saying, because now I am the victim. Like, I need to report for myself. I need to report. We kept saying, could you send an officer out here to take our reports? He goes, but why? No, why do you need a report? You can hear in the recording where he kept saying, no, like, why do you need we got a report on it. He just absolutely would not take, he did not want to take a report whatsoever. He was making up all kind of excuses. He was like, no, he kept on saying, what he kept saying was, it's already a report out there. We don't need your report. And we're like, yeah, you do. Because now I'm getting harassed. Now I am, somebody's impersonating me. I want to protect myself. What if someone goes out and, something happens to this girl and it comes back on me and it's not even me? Yes, exactly. we want to do a report, because now this is something dangerous. You just left over my house yesterday saying that someone was bodily injuring this girl and messing up this girl's car. So now y'all are looking at that to be me and my family. Yes, I do want to make a report.
So I think today Holly needs to speak with an officer to make a new report.
Of what? That's what I'm asking.
Regarding the situation with the Facebook impersonation, fraud, feeling like she's being harassed.
It's all documented.
And it has all been documented because she did not make her own report.
We don't make two reports for the same incident. It all goes under the same report.
How would that be the same incident if she didn't make that report?
It's all investigated. It's talking about the same crime and the same everything.
No, I agree. It would be the same crime. That's the point. But she needs to make her own report because her family and her feel in danger.
Okay.
So is that not something that you can do?
For what offense, though? That's what I'm asking.
Because how do we know that it's not her? How do we know it's not her, for one? And how do we know it's not...
I don't know it's not her.
And then how do we
Absolutely, I don't. If I knew it was her doing this, the report that I would have changed that title to would have been a false report, and I would have got a warrant for arrest.
Well, and this is cyber stalking at this point, so that is a report in itself. Has there been one regarding cyber stalking?
It's all involving it, yes. The Facebook stuff, yes, it has.
Cyber stalking on me, though.
But
she found it on me.
And
we
I understand
get the point that it's all
what y'all
together.
are saying, but we don't do like this person makes this about the same offense, this report. It's all under one case, not two separate cases.
Right. Understood. So today, Holly needs to make a report for cyber stalking because she feels like her family is in danger. It is attached to this case, but it is not the same case.
It is the same.
It's not.
It is because it's been investigated and we can't prove who's doing it.
Holly cannot make a report today. Is that what you're saying?
For what?
Cyber stalking.
That's
harassment.
It's been investigated for that, yes. I've talked to her. We've talked about through all of that. It's all under that one case. We don't just investigate, like say if you make a...
I'm going to call my lawyer real quick.
If you talk about...
Okay, can we make a report today?
For?
Cyber stalking, harassment, and impersonation.
impersonation of.
Holly.
Okay, under what?
Are you refusing to take
No,
my police
I'm
report?
not. I'm not refusing.
Okay, well, we
nothing.
need to make a police report. So either you're going to take the report or you're not.
Okay, and I understand what you're asking. But
No, you
I
don't, because you keep asking me.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with you.
You don't have to. You
I'm
can take the
not.
report.
I don't take first reports.
Okay, then you can send someone to take the report. Thank you.
Okay.
So we have to escalate the situation where they have to, I think it was Tori demands to speak to a supervisor, and then finally a sergeant comes out. And then finally the sergeant does agree to let you file a report because he knows that the detective is wrong and that you have a right to file a report.
Right.
So then they take you back. But then there's also this weird time where you're back there and Detective Young comes into the room with you, because we have a recording of that. Was that Detective Young who comes in the room, or is that the sergeant?
That was the sergeant.
So the sergeant comes in and goes on this weird, no offense to anyone in the lobby thing for like 30 minutes, telling you basically he's trying to cover their ass.
Right. And he's there for me, covering them, just like you just said, covering them. And there were several times where he kept saying, "We don't think it's you." And I said, "But you do think it's me, because y'all keep coming over to my house and harassing me and telling me what's going on. So yeah, you do think it's me." But at the same time, he's telling me, but we don't think it's you doing it. We know it's not you doing it. We know it's not your text messages. We know it's not you. So that right there made me think, do they know who it is? Did they get something back from Facebook? And they're just not telling me who it is, but they know.
Which is what I think. Which is what I think. I think they did get it back and they didn't like the answer they got.
Right.
Yeah. So then the patrol officer comes in to take your report. And while he's taking your report, he starts referencing, again, at this point, you still think there's only the one report made by Ashley Pittner involving this singular incident related to Facebook messages. At least you think that's the only report that has anything to do with you. That so far you've been led to believe that's the only thing that has any correlation to you directly as far as being listed as a suspect for any potential crime.
Right.
But at this point, this reporting officer who comes in to take your report, he starts referencing, and unfortunately your phone died, so we don't have recording at this point, but he starts referencing other reports that are filed. And that's when you realize, holy shit, there's not just this one report that mentions me. There's apparently multiple. And one of the reports he started talking about Kevin.
He said, "Hey, Kevin," and we didn't get that, but he told me that Kevin Phillips, he's on one of these reports, but somehow we didn't get that report neither. So, but then he started saying Emma Childress, which is Kevin's Phillips' sister-in-law, reported. I forgot what she reported on one of the incident reports.
So yeah, we're gonna get on that one definitely. Yeah. But he starts mentioning at this point, just in the room. Now we don't have the full case reports at this point. We just have kind of the public statements. So there may have been additional statements inside the full report that he's referencing. But while he's in the room talking to you, he starts referencing other reports, and he's basically telling you that within the victim statements of these reports, both the chief of police, Kevin Phillips, and his sister-in-law, whom he lives with,
yes,
are both mentioned in these reports. So you're kind of like getting this information while you're just trying to make your own report and just kind of dumbfounded.
Yeah, and I even told him, I said, I don't know about these reports. And he looked at my face. He was like, "So none of these reports was mentioned by the detective?" Is what he told me, as what the officer getting my report. And I said, "No." I said, "I only know of the Facebook messages. I don't know about the bodily injured. I didn't know about all those that he kept reading off to me." I said, "I don't know about any of those." So he was kind of like stuck too, because right. Because so
I love when they screw up.
Yeah.
So that's when we come out. That's when you and Tori come out, and Tori, on her game, starts demanding copies of those reports. And then they try to be hesitant about that. And it's like, okay, well, outline the open records request policy then for the city. Tell us how we're supposed to request them then. And so finally, after a back and forth game of petty, the detective agrees to, he's like, okay, I'm going to give you the reports. But actually what he gives you is just a printout of like a cover page. He doesn't give you the full report. Which we haven't requested yet because all of these are pending investigations. Therefore, we know that they're not going to give us the full report. So there's no point in asking right now. But what we get, and I have these pulled up on my screen here, and I'm going to share screenshots of them here on the video when I put this all together. But what we have is we have 4 case reports listing you as a suspect. Now, they doesn't tell us that you're listed as a suspect on these cover pages, but we know that you are because we asked him for the 4 reports related to this incident that you're listed as a suspect. So the first one is listed at, well, let me pull up because I have this outlined in the Fundly. So the first one that occurs is we have a case report filed on April 27th, 2021, and that is for criminal mischief. And that is for property damage of a vehicle valued around $1,300. And this is filed on April 27th around noon at a residential address by an Ashley Pittner. Right. And so April 27th in correlation to the day you were fired. This is the day after you make your EEOC report. Is that right? I want to make sure I get this timeline right. Oh, excuse me. This is so the EEOC report, you called the EEOC on April 27th. So this is the same day, the same day that the EEOC launches their investigation. This is the same day. April 27th is the day that the EEOC first contacts Wheeler Place in regards to this investigation they're launching into racial discrimination and harassment of you leading to getting fired. So the same day around noon, there's this criminal mischief charge filed by Ashley Pittner because she claims somebody damaged her vehicle. Then the same evening at 8:14 p.m., there's another complaint filed. And this time it is again by Ashley Pittner. And she is, the charge is a threatening Facebook message. And then there's another complaint filed at 11:01 p.m. on the same evening, April 27th. And this is, again, this is filed by Ashley Pittner. Now, what's interesting about this report is there is no address listed, no details regarding where, what, when, or how. It just says assault caused bodily injury. So on the other report related to the damage of the vehicle, there's all these details about an address where it occurred and how. Here it just says assault caused bodily injury. So according to these reports, within the same day of April 27th, the same day the EEOC launches their investigation and contacts Wheeler Place, apparently 3 separate incidents occur with Ashley J. Pittner, right? Because first she gets, according to these, it didn't all happen at once. First, her car was damaged. Then she got the threatening Facebook messages. Then hours later that night, she's assaulted and there's bodily injury. But what I still don't understand is these people assaulted her, but she doesn't know who they are, but somehow that still relates to you because you're apparently listed as a suspect because that's how we have this report because that's what we asked for.
I don't see how we can, he said he took pictures of her bodily injuries, but she don't know who it was. But the detective said that they took pictures of her abused up face and injuries, but she don't know who done it. They supposedly threw a rock from the road and hit her in the face with it, is what he told me.
The next day, April 28th at 10:34 a.m., there's another case filed, but this time it's not by Ashley Pittner. This time, this report is made by Emma Childress, and it's reported from Wheeler House. And it says terroristic threat by terminated employee. So here's what I find interesting. First of all, tell me, what is Emma Childress's position at Wheeler Place?
She is the head chef at Wheeler Place.
This is the police chief's sister-in-law. They live together.
Right.
He used to be married to her sister. He's not married to her sister anymore, but they still live together.
Correct.
Everyone watching is certainly getting the picture here.
Right.
You just can't make this shit up.
You can't. You really can't.
So this woman who's the head cook at Wheeler Place apparently makes a report to the Gainesville Police Department from Wheeler House that there was a terroristic threat sent by you. Now, one would think that something this serious would be reported by, oh, hell, I don't know.
Right.
The director of the facility.
Right.
But that's not what occurs.
No.
And there's no other additional information about this.
No,
nothing was ever mentioned to you at Wheeler Place about, a threat what's against the facility or anything. Right. So this is the first time we learn about all this. We get all these, you leave the and so now we have these 4 open investigations and that's all we have. Now, we should be clear that you have not been notified of any official charges being filed against you.
No.
But what we do know now is that there are these 4 open investigations with some pretty serious accusations being made with you listed as a suspect. Right. And all of them relate to friends, Lynn Homer, who was your direct supervisor, who you reported for harassment and discrimination. Both Emma Childress and Ashley Pittner are good friends. They all go out drinking together. They're drinking buddies.
And I want to say something.
Both of them, Lynn Homer and Emma Childress, have close relationships with the police chief. Emma Childress being his live-in roommate / sister-in-law. Lynn Homer being his girlfriend. And Ashley Pittner being friends of Lynn Homer and Emma Childress.
And I don't even know, I have not told you this. A month before all of this, and I think they should, I'll talk to you later about trying to get that report from the Wheeler Place. But a month before that, Ashley Pittner came to work. Like I said, she was on 3rd shift and I was on 2nd shift. And she came to work and she said, she didn't come to work. Nope, someone called in that night. And so I was there until about 1 o'clock in the morning I contacted Lynn and said, hey, the person that was supposed to be here called in. You need to get me a relief before I can go home. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, Ashley Pittner comes in on her day off. And she comes in, hi. And she said, I'm high. She said, I told Lynn I was high on pills, and she still made me come to work. I reported right then and there, I reported that to Michelle Criswell. That, hey, Ashley came and told me and another girl that she was high. She told Lynn she was high, and Lynn still made her come to work high around our residents, not capable. What if by herself, she was going to be there by herself, high around our residents.
That's really dangerous when you think about you have elderly patients who are relying on you to help them get up and down. And
Yes. So she didn't care. She had been that same night she was there drinking with Lynn and everything. So Lynn didn't actually have to call her. She was already at Lynn's house. And Lynn was like, hey, you need to go to work. I reported that the next day. They put Lynn on administrative leave. They let her come back because they said it was hearsay. So they let her come back after 3 days of being on administrative leave because they said it was here after they took my report and another girl's report that said that Ashley did say that. They let Lynn come back to work on administrative.
Well, now we know what Ashley Pittner's motive is.
Yep.
You reported her for coming to work high.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I see. It's just like when you were in school, it's always the Black person's fault.
Exactly. That goes back to school.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So now here we are. Now you have the EEOC is still conducting their investigation, but of course, Wheeler Place is not cooperating. I believe their first. I thought this was really interesting. Their first attempt to resolve the issue was they offered to not contest your unemployment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you would drop your EEOC claim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they said
that's what they told the EEOC.
That's what they called the EEOC. Yeah, the I forgot what he was called, the mediator. Mm-hmm. Before they get a lawyer involved, EEOC likes to get a mediator to see if we can resolve it without getting a lawyer involved. So that was the only thing that they came up with was they won't fight my unemployment. If I drop the case.
Which is ironic considering the fact that they would lose an unemployment battle anyway.
Right.
But that said, I mean, you're not looking for unemployment. You're out there. You just got a new job.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Which you're about to start. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that doesn't change the fact that you were fired unexpectedly and you have all these bills to pay and you still have a family to take care of. And
right.
I know that our next goal is some trauma support. I know that, you already had some physical issues going on because of stress related issues. And we certainly want to keep you out of the hospital. We do not want any more blood transfusions or any more surgeries for you. So our next goal is to get some trauma support, maybe just some therapy for you. A lot of times we forget that, there's a serious toll on our bodies, and especially the bodies of Black women who tend to bear the emotional stress of racism.
I agree.
Yeah. And so that's something that, we've definitely made our next priority. We got the security system installed. We did get that done.
Yeah,
you are now able to not only monitor your home, but as I told people, I was talking on TikTok about you today, encouraging people to donate, is that security system is critical because it's also your alibi.
Yeah.
The next time somebody wants to say something happened and they might want to try to blame you. Well, guess what? You're on camera is not leaving home and we're being here or whatever. So that's also part of just defending your family and protecting you. And people don't realize the kind of strategic maneuvers we have to make. Like, it's such a big deal for you to be willing to go public with your story.
Right.
We know that this is just going to lead to more attacks and more harassment and more intimidation because the goal is to silence you. So just you even going public. People don't realize, look what happened just because you made a complaint with the EEOC, a federal agency who's supposed to be there to help you when this thing happens. And look what's happened as a backlash result.
Exactly. And, and not only I have to worry about what they're going to tell my probation officer, how they're going to treat my kids at school. I mean, there's a lot that before I went public, there was a lot of thought into this. But again, another thought was in this was, what if they lose their mom behind in bars, in prison, behind some stuff that she didn't do? So I had to fight, and I'm willing to keep fighting. And it's going to come, like you said, it's going to come. It's going to get worse. We know it's probably going to get worse. We know it's, but I'm willing to keep fighting to prove that I'm innocent, and I'm willing to keep fighting so they can find out. They know. I believe that they know who it is. So I'm willing to keep fighting until they come out to tell us who it was, and we can move forward with that as well.
And it seems like Wheeler Place or Levant knows that it's BS too, because Lynn Homer got fired right after you.
He did.
Now, we don't know the full details on that, but it does seem to be correlated to the timeline. But of course, they're not going to come forth and haven't come forth and publicly done anything, So at this point, our goals are, we've raised, let me see, as of today on June 4th at 11 p.m., we have raised $21.85. And as of the transfer that I sent you this morning, you've collected all of that.
Right.
And we've used that money so far to get you caught up on your house rent payment and car payment. And also this was after we prioritized security. First, we got that security surveillance system installed. And I think what I put out to people today is that in order to make sure that you're caught up on all of your bills and to give you just a little cushion, but also so we can start getting you into the trauma counseling that we want to get you into. I'm calling on people. The total goal is $5,000 because we wanted to give you a little extra cushion. But right now, just to get you where you need to be, to carry you through to when you start your new job, our goal is to get to $3,000. And so my goal is to make that happen like yesterday. So I'm really pushing people
to
make that contribution. But also what I want people to understand is supporting you is not just about making a contribution financially. Well, that's helpful and it's part of the equation because resources are just part of it. We have to have resources to fight. People need to lift your story up. People need to listen, they need to pay attention, and they need to learn from it, but they also need to put your story out there because it is the story of so many. And, we think about racism and police brutality is always this kind of end game loss of life. And I certainly don't want to minimize that, right? I mean, obviously, we have to continue to say the names of those taken by officers and by police unjustly. But what we also have to remember is that there are real world terror campaigns being launched in communities like yours in rural towns across Texas, across North Texas, across the South, across the nation, where policing is still operated in the dark. The good old boy club still rules the town. These are terror campaigns no different than they were when they wore white hoods a century ago. They don't burn crosses anymore. Now they just show up and shine a flashlight in your face and demand you hand over your phone. But these are the same types of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I want people to hear your story.
Yeah. And it's scary. And if you're not Black, you won't understand. You won't understand what we have to deal with daily. My story is just, very little of a lot. But yes, maybe someone else is going through the same thing that I'm going through being a Black person. Maybe they're going through the same thing at their jobs that I'm going through, and they're scared like I was. They're scared to make it public, or they can't make it public because financially. I mean, that's part of the main reason. Being Black in Gainesville, you cannot get many jobs. So the ones that you get, you have to keep because you can't get very, very many jobs. Over the phone, I can get it because my name's Holly and I might not sound like a Black person. And my name's probably not like, a typical Black person name. But in person, when it's time to get the job, there's very little jobs here. So the ones that you have to keep. You have to keep the ones that you get. I mean, prior to that, I was at this casino for 13 years. So I didn't hop around on jobs and stuff. I was there for 13 years, So I haven't had very many jobs because I was there for so long.
And to clarify, the casino is not even in Gainesville. You had to travel to another state.
Right.
You drove to Oklahoma every day to go to work. Yeah.
So I want my story to be told. I want my story to be shared. And I'm, like I said, I'm ready to fight. And not just for myself, but for other African Americans.
Well, I just want to tell you that I really appreciate your trust in me to launch this fight. And, you know, I'm going to continue to fight with you and lift your voice and lift your story, and to encourage others to do the same. And I just hope that, you know, at the end of this, it'll all be worth it. It's hard sometimes to evaluate whether it's worth it or not. You know, sometimes the fight is just, you just got to fight because it's what you got to do, whether it feels worth it or not. And I know that that's part of some of the decision making internal battle you had to make, you know, that we talked about. And for whatever it means, you know, I worry that this sounds somewhat belittling when I say it, or I hope it doesn't come across that way, but I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you.
Because I know I've seen what that community is like, and I know that it's hard for you. I know that it's a real commitment and jump for you to do this, and I'm just so proud of you for doing it.
Thank you, and I appreciate helping.
I'm honored.
We don't have very many people here, white people here that will help us, but I appreciate you helping. And it started out with Pro Gainesville to now. We appreciate you.
I know you do. And I see it as an investment, you know, in the future for all of us. I just, and I hope that my goal is, I hope that more white privileged individuals will learn how to exploit their privilege to do this work, because it's important that we do it. But it's my honor to fight alongside people as courageous as you. You know, you inspire me. So thank you for doing that. Well, Holly, I can't thank you enough for your time. We're going to continue to tell your story. We're going to continue to talk about it. We're going to continue to call out Chief Phillips. We're going to continue, or Chief Terrorist, as I like to call him, Kevin Phillips. We're going to continue to call out Wheeler Place. And quite frankly, I think Levant needs to start answering and needs to show some accountability here, because quite frankly, what it looks like to me is they knew exactly what was going on and they swept it under the rug.
I agree. Because they were all kept informed, and I made sure that the corporate and a lot of it and everybody was kept informed. So I know they knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we're going to make sure that the police aren't able to continue to harass you. We definitely are in touch with the ACLU. We're monitoring whether or not any official charges are filed. But this is one of their favorite games. You know, I'm working with a Black woman here in Denton who's had charges or a case against her that put her in jail twice, though no official charges have been filed for more than a year now. So they know what they're doing when they hold these things over you. It's part of the terror campaign. So we're going to continue to monitor that, stay on top of it, and again, just continue to tell the story. But in the meantime, I think part of this is, like, part of your success here is the way that you so graciously just didn't allow them to victimize you. You know, they tried, but you have been really on your game and staying on top of it and not allowing them to crush you. You know, you got another job, you're doing what you got to do to take care of your family, you're staying on top of your game, you're advocating for yourself. And well, that seems kind of like no-brainer stuff. It's hard to do in the face of this.
Yes. It was very hard to pick myself up and say, hey, you have to do this. You have to keep on with life. Because this is our life. Being African Americans, this is our life. We're living this life. So you have to just pick up and you have to be strong and you have to keep going. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Holly, my love to you. Give my love to your family. And we're going to keep this going, and you know how to find me when you need me.
I will. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Holly.